It's been a good run, but now we're at the end of Ezio's story. This one's going to be a long one, and I think I probably gotten a little bit carried away. We're going to strip the story down and we're going to look at what worked and what didn't about this game. We're going to have a good chat, so get your sens comfy, grab a cup of tea and let's get stuck in. Now, if you'd have asked me, back before I started this insane binge, which Assassin's Creed game I'd probably replay the least, I would have said Odyssey, without even thinking about it, because falling into that purgatory again is the last thing that I ever want to do. But as a second, I would have said Revelations, for completely different reasons though. Not because I didn't like it. It was good, but I didn't love it. And I think that was where I was in my own life and my own maturity when I first played it. It was the one that got cooked between two beasts. Because before this, we had Brotherhood, which many people still consider the peak of the Ezio trilogy. It's one of my favourite games in the franchise. And after this one, we got Assassin's Creed 3, with a brand new assassin, the American Revolution, and what Ubisoft marketed as the biggest leap the series had ever made. So poor old Revelations found itself stuck in a chair in the corner of the hotel room, quietly existing while everyone else was just getting busy. And I think that's exactly why it's become one of the most misunderstood games in the franchise. If Assassin's Creed 2 is about becoming an assassin, Brotherhood is about becoming a mentor, and Revelations is about becoming, well, more human. And now I'm closer to 40 than I am 20, I appreciate that a lot more than I did back in the day. It's about growing old, looking back on your life, and wondering if everything you sacrificed actually meant something. Maybe, most importantly, it's about finally knowing when it's time to let go. It's not exactly a theme that the 21-year-old stoner that I was back in the day was interested in. But then, I wanted more Brotherhood and Prime Ezio. Now I've matured, I'm married and I have kids. I've experienced the highs and lows of life. And I've grown wiser, and I've got some greys in my beard. I appreciate the themes of this a lot more now. And to be fair, Revelation still gives Ezio plenty of room to cook. Some traditions are just too important to abandon. But now replaying it years later, it's impossible not to notice how different this game feels. This isn't a victory lap. Ubisoft could easily have made it one. They already had the perfect hero. Ezio had become one of gaming's most beloved protagonists. We'd watched him transform from an arrogant 17-year-old rich kid who cared more about getting ass than philosophy, into the leader of the Italian Brotherhood. We'd fought with him for decades, we'd watched him lose his father and his brothers and his uncle, countless friends, and somehow he never lost himself. Coming back to Revelations now is a strange experience. Ubisoft looked at Ezio, a man who had already spent 3 decades stabbing people all across Italy, and decided what he really needed was another year at work. Most men in their 50s start thinking about slowing down, little walks on beach with dog, maybe birdwatching or golf. Not Ezio. He looks at a map, jumps on a ship to Syria, and says, "You know what sounds relaxing? Finding another place full of people that are trying to kill me." That's basically where Revelation starts. This game ain't trying to make Ezio more impressive. There's nowhere left to go with that, the bloke is a legend. He avenged his family, exposed the conspiracy behind their deaths, and survived Rodrigo Borgia. He rebuilt the Brotherhood, dragged Rome out of shit, and dumped Cesare Borgia off a castle. But he's older now, and he can't do this forever. For the first time, Ezio isn't chasing revenge. He's chasing understanding, and more specifically, he's chasing Altaïr. Not literally. Altaïr has been dead for centuries, and I imagine the conversation would be fairly one-sided. Ezio's a lot of things, but having a pint and a catch-up with a corpse pushes it into Ed Gein territory a little bit. But what Ezio really wants is to understand the man whose life shaped the Brotherhood that he now leads. He's read the Codex, used the technologies that are created from his designs, he's followed his philosophies, and he's even worn the bloke's armour. But he's never really known the man himself, and that's what takes Ezio all the way back to Masyaf, the place where Assassin's Creed began. The first time we saw Masyaf, back in 2007, it felt alive. Assassins trained in the courtyards, people moved through the settlement, Al-Mulim ruled from the fortress. Altaïr walked around with that big dick energy that you only get when nobody tells you you're an unbearable prick. Now Ezio arrives more than 300 years later, and the place is practically a ghost town. The fortress is collapsing, the Brotherhood is long gone, The great assassin stronghold has just become another ruin. It's not exactly subtle symbolism. Ezio spent most of his life becoming a legend, and now he's standing in the remains of one. The message is pretty obvious. Everything ends. All of it. Cities, empires, me, you, everyone. Even an old Italian bloke who carries enough weaponry to have his own exhibit in the royal armouries. It's all shady stuff. And because Assassin's Creed has never liked allowing Ezio more than 30 seconds of quiet reflection, as soon as he arrives, the Templars immediately try to hang him. Honestly, if there's one thing Templars are good at, it's turning up exactly where they're not wanted. You could probably send Ezio on a day trip to Doncaster and he'd find a secret Templar base behind a bargain booth. The Byzantine Templars have occupied Masyaf, and they're looking for Altaïr's hidden library. Obviously, nobody actually knows what's inside it. But this is Assassin's Creed, so everyone just assumes it's probably something ancient and capable of ruining human civilization. No, it's not me mother-in-law. But that is a fair assumption. Ezio's captured, nearly executed, and then he escapes in one of the most impressive sequences I've ever seen in a game. If the game ended with Ezio being hanged 10 minutes in, there would have been some very pissed off fans. The chase through the fortress already feels different from Brotherhood. Ezio goes full-on beast mode. The adrenal gland on our boy must be as big as his plums. He moves faster, the climbing feels direct. The environment is rougher and less clean than Renaissance Italy. Masyaf is broken architecture, so you're moving through collapsed walls and damaged structures rather than elegantly scaling a cathedral while people politely pretend not to notice. It's a small thing, but it gives us a tease of one of Revelation's biggest ideas mechanically. Ezio doesn't need new abilities, because he somehow forgot everything that he knew between games. He needs new ways to do the old things more efficiently. And that's exactly where the hook blade will come in later. But first though, Ezio's got to deal with Leandros. Now this guy is not exactly one of Assassin's Creed's great villains. He's a bit of a bellend, but he's basically there to be chased, stabbed, and just useful enough to point Ezio in the right direction. And honestly, not everyone needs to be Cesare Borgia. Sometimes you just need a bloke to die with a bit of useful information on him. Ezio kills him and discovers that Altaïr's library cannot be opened. It needs 5 keys. These keys have been taken to Constantinople. And this is where the whole game suddenly becomes more interesting, because the keys don't just unlock a door, they all contain Altaïr's memories. Ezio's going to find them one by one and experience pieces of Altaïr's life. Meanwhile, Desmond is in the Animus experiencing Ezio, while Ezio's experiencing Altaïr. It's a bit confusing, and it's kind of like a memory inception. It's the sort of shite that would make absolutely no sense if you hadn't spent the last few games being slowly trained to accept whatever nonsense Assassin's Creed throws at you. But somehow, it works. Anyway, Ezio leaves Masyaf and he hops on a ship to Constantinople. And that move is more important than just giving us a new city. Italy has defined Ezio for most of his life. Florence was his home, Venice was where he matured, and the villa became his home. Rome became his responsibility. Everywhere he goes in Italy, his name has aura. Constantinople strips all of that away. He's just another foreigner. Admittedly, a foreigner with the contents of an entire armoury stuffed up his robes. But still, nobody cares that he defeated the Borgias. And nobody cares that he rebuilt the Brotherhood. He's about to enter somebody else's world. And to be honest, that's good for him. The city is almost perfect for the story. By 1511, Constantinople had already changed a few times. It's been a Roman capital, Byzantine capital, Ottoman capital, Christian and Muslim centres, and the point where Europe meets Asia. It's a city that changed repeatedly without ever completely erasing what came before, so it kind of mirrors Ezio. He's doing exactly the same thing. The angry teenager is still in there somewhere, so is the Avenger and the Mentor, and now the older man, wondering if he might be allowed a week off without someone asking him to stab a bent politician. The city wears its history the same way Ezio does, in layers. And then Yusuf turns up. Yusuf is one of those characters that stays with you. He's an absolute lad. I'd love to buy him a pint. He leads the Ottoman Assassins, and he doesn't treat Ezio like some sacred old relic. He respects him, and he knows who he is, but he also talks to him like a man. That makes their relationship feel more natural than just another side character standing around glazing Ezio's balls. Yusuf jokes with him, he shows him the city, introduces him to the local brotherhood, and then he gives him the hookblade, which he explains has two parts.
The standard Ottoman hook blade has two parts, you see. The hook and the blade. So you can use one or the other.
Brilliant. A true technical breakthrough. It's a good job Yusuf was there, or Ezio might have spent the rest of the game trying to work out which each part was. The hookblade sounds silly when you describe it, but it's actually one of the smartest mechanical additions in the game. It makes Ezio faster. He can now reach further when he's jumping, catch ledges easier, pull himself up structures quickly, use zip lines to cross the city. It doesn't replace the old parkour system, but it makes it less fiddly. And that feels right for an older Ezio. He isn't learning how to climb again. He's climbed enough shit at this point. He just wants to get up there before his knees give out. Constantinople is designed around that increased speed. The rooftops are packed tightly. The streets are dense. The city changes elevation constantly. Zip lines cut across the gaps. You start moving through it without really thinking too much about individual button presses. And that's where Assassin's Creed's parkour has always been at its best. Not when the game tells you exactly where to go, but when you hit a flow state and your brain starts turning buildings into routes automatically and you act on instinct. A balcony isn't a balcony anymore, it's a step. A beam is a launch point. An awning is somewhere to land. A guard is an inconvenience with a pension that he's never going to cash out. You begin reading the city, not just moving through it. And while Ezio is learning how Constantinople works, he's also learning that the Brotherhood here doesn't need him to save it. Yusuf already has his own organisation. There are recruits, safe houses and contracts, and people who actually already know the city. Ezio does something the younger version of him would have struggled with. He just stops and he listens. He doesn't arrive, swing his massive bollocks around and start telling everyone how things should be, or how things are going to work now that the big dog is in town. He makes himself useful, and the game does an amazing job at making him feel older and more mature, not because he's slower, but because he no longer assumes experience means he knows everything. That lesson will bite him in the arse later with Tariq, but for now, he's behaving himself. The old Borgia tower system returns in a slightly different form with the assassin dens. Instead of burning huge towers every 5 minutes and making Rome look like it's developed a deeply specific arson problem, Ezio takes over Templar positions and gradually strengthens the assassin control. It's a lot quieter, less theatrical, and it fits the city much better. Constantinople is not under one enormous Templar dictatorship. The enemy is working through politics, influence, and old Byzantine loyalties. So the war feels less like open occupation and more like a fight that's happening in the shadows. And then some weapon at Ubisoft must have had an addiction to tower defense games during development and said in a meeting, "You know what lads, let's jam it in this game." So now, if Ezio raises Templar awareness too far, the enemy can attack one of your dens. And suddenly you're standing on a roof placing units, barricades and defences. Now, it's not terrible, but it is really odd. 1 minute you're a master assassin moving through crowds, and the next, you're doing this shite. Like I said, it feels like someone at Ubisoft got really carried away, and nobody had the bollocks to stop him. Fortunately, if you develop your recruits properly, you can eventually make dens secure, and you never really have to touch this system again. It kind of makes the whole thing stranger and pretty pointless when you think about it, because the game is actually rewarding you by removing one of its new features. And to be honest, after doing it myself a couple of times, I just ignored them entirely, and it really didn't impact or make a difference to the game. The recruit system is something much better this time around. Brotherhood introduced the idea of building your own assassin network, but the recruits mostly felt empty and interchangeable. You'd save someone from a guard, send them off to Venice, and then they'd come back several hours later, apparently capable of dismantling a small army, with no questions asked. Revelations gives the higher level recruits a lot more personality. Ezio mentors them. They get their own personalities, problems, mistakes and missions. It reminds me a little bit of a very basic version of the Nemesis system from the Middle-earth Shadow games, before that was even a thing. And it makes much more sense where Ezio is in his life to be doing this now. He doesn't need to be handling everything himself anymore. His biggest contribution should be teaching other people how to handle shit themselves. This is what a mentor is supposed to be. Not the strongest bloke in the room. The man who eventually doesn't need to be in the room at all. And while all this is happening, Ezio meets Sophia. Sophia is important because she's not tied to any of this assassin bullshit. She owns her own bookshop. She likes history. She's intelligent, curious and independent. She's not a secret assassin, and she's not part of an ancient conspiracy. She's not waiting for Ezio to reveal that her grandfather was actually a Templar and a butt plug is a piece of Eden. She's just Sophia. And that is exactly what Ezio needs. Their relationship begins because she helps him track down information connected to the Masyaf keys. But slowly you get the sense that he starts visiting because he actually wants to see her. And older Ezio is strangely sweet around her. This is not the same man who spent his 20s knobbing his way across Italy with the confidence of a dog in heat. Now he's calmer. He's more cautious. He's almost shy at times. He's not trying to perform anymore. Sophia doesn't care about the legend because she likes the man. And that's probably the first time in decades Ezio has ever had that. Most people in his life know what he's done and what he represents and what they all want from him. Sophia just wants to spend time with him and talk about books, which after 30 years of stacking bodies must feel unbelievably relaxing. And while Sophia is giving Ezio something to look forward to, the Masyaf keys are pulling him back. Each one shows another piece of Altaïr's life. And this is where Revelations really finds its purpose. Ezio thinks he's trying to understand Altaïr because Altaïr has answers. What he actually finds is a man who made a shitload of mistakes. He lost people and nearly lost himself. He spent decades trying to understand the creed, and eventually he realised that even the Brotherhood has to be allowed to change, which is exactly the lesson that Ezio needs. He just doesn't know it yet. At the same time, the Templars are working their way through Constantinople. The Ottoman succession is becoming unstable. Prince Suleiman is asking questions, and the Janissaries are becoming suspicious. The Byzantine cause is tied to something much larger. And Ezio, as usual, has somehow arrived in a city about 5 minutes before the entire political situation goes tits up. He really does have a gift for finding shite. That political shitstorm begins with Prince Suleiman. And one of the things that Assassin's Creed has always done well is letting us meet famous historical figures before they become the version that history will remember. In Revelations, Suleiman is not yet Suleiman the Magnificent, the enormously powerful Ottoman ruler whose reign will eventually reshape the empire. Right now, he's just a young prince, and he's just trying to understand what's happening around him. And there is quite a lot happening. Sultan Bayezid, I'm going to get a lot of these wrong by the way, he's getting older. His sons are circling the succession, different political groups are backing different candidates. The Janissaries have their own interests. Byzantine loyalists are still dreaming about reclaiming Constantinople. And naturally, the Templars have taken one look at this instability and thought, lovely lads, we'll have some of that. Because if Assassin's Creed has taught us anything, it's that Templars absolutely get bricked up for a power vacuum. Suleiman meets Ezio during all of this, and he quickly recognises that he's not just some slightly overdressed Italian bloke. Meanwhile, Ezio sees something different in Suleiman as well. He's clever, he listens, he's curious, and most importantly, he's willing to admit when he hasn't got a clue what's going on. That last quality probably appeals to Ezio more than it would have done 30 years earlier. Young Ezio liked certainty. Older Ezio has learned to be suspicious of anyone who has too much of it. Their relationship becomes one of mutual respect, rather than teacher and student. Ezio gives Suleiman advice, but he never treats him like a child, and Suleiman listens, but he's not blindly obedient. And slowly, Suleiman pulls Ezio into a conspiracy involving the Janissaries. Here is where Tariq enters the story. Tariq is captain, and everything about him seems suspicious. He's secretive, he's stashing weapons and moving them around. He's meeting people that he probably shouldn't be meeting, and he appears to be dealing with Byzantine forces. And he refuses to explain himself properly. Basically, if you were designing a man specifically to look guilty and suspicious, you would stop about halfway through Tariq. So Ezio investigates the big lad. And this is where the game gives us a nice bit of social stealth again. To get close to the Janissaries, Ezio disguises himself and moves through their camp. It's classic Assassin's Creed. You're not invisible, and you're not surrounded by enemies. You survive by acting like you belong there. That's the original fantasy of the series at its best. It's not crouching and crawling around in bushes, or hiding behind conveniently waist-high walls. It's walking straight through the danger because nobody even realises what you are. Of course, the disguise itself does require a little suspension of disbelief. Apparently, nobody looks at this grey-bearded Italian bloke with scars on his face and thinks, hang on, has he always looked like that? Like he's been through wars and 2 emotional breakdowns? No. Alright, fair enough. You carry on, my guy. The Janissaries themselves are also one of the better combat advancements in Revelations. Normal guards aren't much of a threat to Ezio anymore. They can't be. Our boy is a beast. It would be ridiculous if this man had spent decades becoming one of the hardest men alive only to get battered by 3 blokes called Ahmed by a fruit stall. So Ubisoft introduces enemies who are genuinely trained enough to give him a hard time. The Janissaries can interrupt Ezio's execution chains. They can resist certain attacks altogether. They've got firearms, they can take more punishment, and they force you to mix your tactics instead of relying on the same counter-kill loop every time. They're still manageable once you understand them, but they at least make combat feel like something more than Ezio just performing executions. That becomes important when Ezio finally reaches Tariq, because Ezio just kills him. And then he immediately discovers that he has dropped a massive bollock. Tariq was not helping the Templars, he was infiltrating them. The weapons that he was supplying were part of a plan to gain access to the Byzantine operation in Cappadocia. I don't know if I've said that right. The suspicious meetings were exactly what they looked like, except the conclusion that Ezio drew from them was wrong. Tariq dies explaining the truth, and there is no way around it. Ezio assassinated the wrong bloke. And this is one of the most important moments in Revelations because it reminds us that experience does not create perfection. If anything, experience can sometimes make mistakes more dangerous. Ezio has spent decades learning to recognise patterns. Templars stash weapons, they work in secret, and they manipulate political factions. He sees this same pattern and he acts on instinct. But this time, the pattern is misleading. And what makes it even more interesting is that Ezio is currently spending half his time experiencing Altaïr's memories, which repeatedly teach him not to mistake certainty for truth. Apparently, that lesson hasn't really fully sunk in yet. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. Maybe ask one more question before stabbing the captain of the Ottoman elite infantry, you dick. But still, the damage is done. Ezio can't undo it. So instead of drowning in guilt, he finishes Tariq's mission. The trail leads him to Cappadocia. And this is where Revelations decides Constantinople was not enough and casually gives us an underground city. This place is one of the most visually distinctive areas in the game, and maybe the entire franchise, to be honest. Historically, the region is famous for settlements carved into the rock and underground complexes that could shelter enormous numbers of people. Ubisoft takes that real history and he turns it into a hidden stronghold. The atmosphere completely changes. Constantinople is open, it's bright, warm and busy. This place feels like someone built an entire city in a tomb. Smoke hangs in the air, buildings are stacked into the rock. The paths twist, and there's nowhere to simply climb up and disappear. And that changes the way that stealth works. In Constantinople, if a plan goes wrong, you can usually just scramble up on a roof, break line of sight and then vanish. In this place, you're trapped underground. Your escape route is often another tunnel that leads to another tunnel that's containing people that also want to kill you. So it's not an ideal situation to be in. But it makes the location feel different rather than just another reskinned district. Ezio is hunting Manuel, a noble who dreams of restoring the Byzantine Empire. Manuel is interesting because his motivation is not complete shite. The Byzantines lost Constantinople in 1453. To people like Manuel, the Ottoman Empire didn't simply inherit the city, they stole it. The political world collapsed, the capital changed hands, their culture lost its centre. So, when Manuel talks about restoration, there is a real grief to it. The problem is that he wants to turn his grief into policy, and preferably a war. And that is where Assassin's Creed is often at its strongest. The villain's motivation can be understandable, while at the same time his solution is completely unacceptable. Manuel wants the past back, but the past doesn't work like that. You can't just reload a save point on an empire and hope everyone currently living there politely pisses off. Restoring Byzantium will mean another war, more death, more people being forced to pay for somebody else's nostalgia. And Manuel has allied himself with the Templars because they are willing to help him do it. Ezio eventually reaches him, kills him, and discovers that Manuel is not actually the top dog, because obviously he isn't. It's Assassin's Creed. There's always another bastard lurking round the curtain. The true Templar leader is Prince Ahmet, Suleiman's uncle, one of the possible successors to the Ottoman throne. And suddenly the entire conspiracy makes a lot more sense. Ahmet is not just helping the Byzantines because he cares about Manuel's historical grievances. He's using them. He wants the Masyaf keys. He wants whatever Altaïr left behind. And most importantly, he wants the power that knowledge could give him. Ahmet is actually a much better Templar than he gets credit for. He is no Cesare Borgia. Cesare wanted power because he was a greedy wanker who wanted everything for himself. Land, bitches, army, Italy. He'd take your last fiver if he could. The man had the restraint of my dog if I left him alone with a roast chicken. But Ahmet is different. He genuinely believes the Templar argument. He looks at the world around him and he just sees chaos. There's Ottomans fighting Byzantines, princes fighting for succession, religious divisions, Christians killing Muslims, people killing each other over territory and power, and he thinks, surely someone should slap some order on all of this. And that is where the Templars are always at their most interesting, because the problem they identify is real. He's not exactly wrong. Humans are chaotic. We are violent, tribal knobheads, and we are capable of turning almost anything into an argument. We fight over politics, religion, land, football. If pineapple even belongs on pizza. You give us enough time and we will probably kill and die over it. The Templar mistake is believing the solution is control, and more specifically, their control. Now it's funny how no one ever turns around and said, yeah, humanity clearly needs some guidance, but personally, I'm far too much of a knobhead to be trusted with it. Ahmet wants Altaïr's knowledge because he believes he can help create order. And that brings us all the way back to the Masyaf keys. Because while Ezio is chasing Templars around Constantinople, each key is slowly showing him the life that Altaïr lived after the original game had ended. And that story becomes just as important as Ezio's own story. Altaïr becomes mentor after defeating Al-Mulim. But becoming mentor doesn't suddenly turn him into a wise old philosopher. He needs to grow into it. He studies the Apple of Eden. And this is where we begin seeing the real scale of Altaïr's advancements. The apple was not just a weapon. It contains knowledge, technology, information from the Isu that is centuries beyond anything that Altaïr could realistically be able to understand. But he still studies it anyway, slowly and carefully. He learns enough to improve the hidden blade. He helps remove the need for assassins to sacrifice the ring finger, which is probably a good recruitment strategy. Welcome to Brotherhood, mate. Here's your uniform, here's your blade, and that big Phil over there just needs to whip off your finger. Alright, off you go. It's a bit of an hard sell. Altaïr also develops weapons and technologies that are far ahead of his own time. The hidden gun that Ezio eventually uses centuries later traces back to Altaïr's knowledge. His codex becomes a bridge between Isu technology and Renaissance innovation. So several of these mechanical advancements and achievements that we've been using since Assassin's Creed 2 now have a historical explanation within the Brotherhood. That's one of the cleverest things that Revelations does. It takes mechanics we already know and it gives them history. The Brotherhood itself changes because of Altaïr as well. He realises that Masyaf has become too important. One fortress with one mentor is just one centre of authority. And that's exactly what allowed Big Al to become so powerful. If one man can control an entire organisation in one place, then one corrupt man can corrupt everything. Altaïr begins pushing the assassins towards decentralization. He wants to form different branches in different cities with different cultures, but all of them together, still one creed. And that is how the brotherhood that we see in Ezio's time is possible. The Ottoman assassins exist because the brotherhood stopped being one fortress in Syria. The Italian assassins exist because the creed learned how to travel. And eventually, Ezio's Mediterranean defense system reflects that change mechanically. You can send recruits across cities around the Mediterranean. They complete little missions, reduce Templar control, and expand assassin influence. It's basically just a menu. You pick up your recruits, check your success percentages, and you send them on their way. And then later, you discover that they have apparently destabilized an entire foreign government while you were curling one out. But even though the system is simple, it makes the Brotherhood feel intentional. Ezio is not the centre of the war, and neither is Constantinople. The conflict is happening everywhere, and the scale matters. It makes Altaïr's decision to decentralise the Brotherhood feel actually consequential. Unfortunately, Altaïr's personal life didn't really go as smoothly as his reforms. His relationship with Abbas massively deteriorated. Abbas had resented Altaïr since they were kids, mainly because of the circumstances involving their dads. Altaïr tells him that Abbas's old man, Ahmed, was overwhelmed with guilt over the death of Altaïr's old man, and eventually he took himself out. Abbas refused to believe him. He thinks Altaïr is talking shite. And that resentment sits with him for years, and then eventually decades. And that's what makes Abbas an interesting antagonist. He doesn't wake up one morning and decide to become an evil dick thistle. He's hurting, and he never really moves on. Everything that Altaïr does becomes proof that Abbas was right to hate him. Altaïr changed the Brotherhood. Arrogance. He studied the apple. Dangerous. He becomes a mentor. Power-hungry prick. Resentment warps the way that Abbas interprets everything, and eventually that resentment destroys the Brotherhood that Altaïr worked hard to rebuild. Altaïr's son Seth is killed. Malik is framed for the murder, which is ridiculous, because Malik is essentially Altaïr's brother. Then Malik is murdered, before Altaïr has a chance to rescue him. And then comes one of the darkest moments in Altaïr's life. Maria confronts the chaos with him. Everything escalates. The assassins start to close in. The apple is nearby, and in the middle of the scrap, Maria is killed. It is sudden and ugly and senseless, exactly the way that real violence usually is. There's no heroic sacrifice and no final grand speech. No cinematic goodbye. One moment she's there, and the next, she isn't. And Altaïr finally breaks. Not completely, but enough. He reaches for the apple, and for a moment, the man who spent decades resisting its temptation almost becomes Big Al himself. That's the point. It isn't just grief, it's temptation. Altaïr has the power to force everyone around him to get their shit together, to punish them, and to make all of this chaos stop, and bring back some order. And in this moment of unbearable loss, order probably sounds pretty good, but that's how Templar thinking can become seductive. Not when life is calm, but when everything is falling apart around you. Freedom is easy to defend when people behave themselves. It's harder when freedom allows people to destroy each other and everything that you love. Altaïr's entire philosophy is tested, and he nearly fails. He uses the apple. Its power overwhelms everyone around him, and suddenly we see how thin the line between assassin and Templar really is. Altaïr doesn't become evil. He's just desperate. And desperation is much more dangerous. Desperate people can justify doing almost anything. For a few moments, Altaïr is no longer asking whether he is right to control others. He just wants the pain to stop. This is deeply, painfully human and frightening. If someone as disciplined as Altaïr can reach that point, then, well, anyone can. Eventually, he gets control of himself and he stops. That may be the most important decision of his life. Not because he defeats an enemy, because he refuses to become what he stands against. Altaïr realises that staying in Masyaf will only cause more pain and more death. The Brotherhood has fractured. Abbas has manipulated enough members that civil war is inevitable. Altaïr could probably win, and with the apple he could 100% win. But that's the problem. If Altaïr uses the apple to reclaim the Brotherhood, What exactly would he be reclaiming? An organisation dedicated to freedom, manipulated with mind control. He would defeat Abbas, but prove Abbas right. So Altaïr does something that he could never have done as a young man. He just walks away. To be honest, that takes more strength. Sometimes leaving is harder than winning. Bad things happen all the time in the real world. Shit happens. Other than The Last of Us, Red Dead, and a handful of others, games aren't always comfortable with this. Especially back when this one came out. Games usually give us problems because problems can become objectives. Altaïr experiences something harder. Consequences. There is no mission objective for grieving. There's no synchronization for acceptance. There's no chest containing closure. Just like real life, you simply live long enough for the pain to change shape. It either breaks you, or you learn from it and you get stronger. And years later, an elderly Altaïr returns. By now, Abbas has weakened the Brotherhood pretty badly. And this older Altaïr is fascinating because the game doesn't just make him the same Altaïr, but with white hair. He behaves differently. He moves differently. He's patient. He doesn't want to kill the assassins who've been manipulated by Abbas. He wants the Brotherhood back, but without destroying it in the process. And when he finally confronts Abbas, he uses the hidden gun. Abbas, still stuck in the same resentment that defined his entire life, barely understands what he's looking at. And then Altaïr introduces him to several centuries of technological advancement directly through the chest. Quick lesson, very practical. Altaïr does not celebrate though, because revenge isn't the point. Abbas has spent his entire life fighting the version of Altaïr that he hated as a child. But Altaïr grew beyond that man. Abbas never could. That's the tragedy here. Ezio experiences all of this, while his own life is quietly moving in the opposite direction. Altaïr's memories are about a man who gave everything he had to the Brotherhood. Sophia is offering Ezio a life outside of the Brotherhood. And the longer the game goes on, the harder that contrast becomes to ignore. This brings us back to Constantinople. And bombs. Lots and lots and lots of bombs. Bomb crafting is probably one of the biggest mechanical experiments in this game. Yusuf introduces Ezio to the idea with the enthusiasm of a neurodivergent friend explaining his most recent hyperfixation. And then the game immediately opens up a ridiculous number of possible combinations. You can build explosive bombs, smoke bombs, poison bombs, bombs for everything. There's even bombs that use lamb's blood to make guards think someone nearby just died. It's ridiculous. There's generally an obscene amount of depth here, and if you want to play creatively, it is brilliant. The problem is that Ezio is already so powerful that the game rarely forces you to use any of these. Why spend 5 minutes crafting a distraction bomb using 3 exotic ingredients when you can just chuck in a smoke grenade and stab everyone before they finish coughing? Us gamers are an efficient lot. Give us 40 tools and we'll eventually discover which 2 break the game and then use nothing else for 20 hours. So bomb crafting ends up being one of those mechanics that I admire more than I actually personally need. I would personally like to shake hands with whoever was insane enough to craft and use every possible combination. There must be at least 4 of you. Leave a comment if you're one of them. I want to congratulate you. The system is excellent. The missions around it don't always justify how elaborate it is. And still, it shows Ubisoft experimenting with something that will become increasingly important in later games, and that's player choice. Different tools for the same problem. Assassin's Creed is beginning to move away from one correct assassination route and toward a larger sandbox of possibilities. It's not fully there yet, but you can see the bigger picture starting to take shape. The same is true for the Eagle sense. Eagle vision has been part of the series from the beginning, but Revelations expands on it. Ezio can now follow traces, read movement, predict where someone has gone. Again, the game frames this less like a magical new superpower and more like experience. Ezio has been tracking people for 30 odd years now. Of course he notices things that other people don't. He reads spaces, reads behaviour, recognises patterns. It makes him feel older without making him weaker. That is difficult to balance, and Revelations usually handles it pretty well. Unfortunately, age and wisdom still don't stop Ezio doing something pretty questionable in Cappadocia. To escape the underground city, he ignites gunpowder stores. The resulting explosions tear through the settlement. Fire spreads, Smoke fills the tunnels, and there are civilians down there. Now, this is one of those moments where the game moves a little too quickly for my liking. Ezio has spent decades living under a creed that explicitly tells him to protect innocent people. And here we are, causing absolute carnage in an enclosed civilian settlement because it helps him escape. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. You can defend it as desperation, you can argue that destroying the Templar operation is necessary, but that is exactly the sort of reasoning the Assassins are supposed to be careful about. The ends that justify the means is Templar territory. And I wish the game pushed Ezio a lot harder for this, because it would fit the story perfectly. Yes, Ezio is tired, he's cutting corners and he's using more force. The line between what he believes and what he's willing to do is becoming blurrier. Maybe part of his decision to stop at the end is not simply, I'm too old for this shit now. Maybe it's, I don't like what this endless war is turning me into. That is far more interesting. But back in Constantinople, the consequences for Ezio's war are becoming personal again. Because Ahmet knows that Ezio's got the keys. He also knows that sending more soldiers after him isn't working, which isn't surprising. At this point, the Ottoman Templars are probably shitting themselves and writing letters to their union. So Ahmet changes tactics. He attacks the assassin headquarters, and when Ezio returns back, Yusuf is dead. This moment lands hard, because Yusuf wasn't just a side character. He was funny, warm, and capable. He had his own brotherhood. He never treated Ezio like anything other than a friend. And most importantly, he died doing exactly what Ezio had asked him to do, and that was protect Sofia. There isn't a big goodbye. Ezio just finds him, and he's already dead. And for everything else you can say about Revelations, the game knows when to shut up. The silence makes it work. Ezio has lost people for most of his life. He's lost his father, his brothers, Mario, friends, assassins, and now Yusuf. And once again, Ezio is the only one standing. At some point, surviving everyone else starts to feel less like victory and more like a curse. Then Ezio discovers Sofia has been taken. Ahmet offers a trade, the keys for Sofia. And this is where Ezio makes the most important choice in the entire game. He actually agrees. Now think about what those keys represent. They're everything that he came here for. Altaïr's life, the library, the brotherhood, knowledge, potentially another piece of Eden. Ezio's crossed countries. He's killed men and he's buried another friend to get this far. And he's willing to give it all up for Sofia. This is another point I missed when I was younger. Before I was married and I had my own family, I thought Ezio was just gearing up because he were whipped. But that's not Ezio failing the mission. It's Ezio understanding what actually matters to him. For decades, every personal thing in his life has come second to the brotherhood. Now he's drawing a line. This is not going to be Sofia, and it is not going to happen again. And now there's something beautifully simple about that. He doesn't need a speech about love, he just chooses her. The final confrontation with Ahmet becomes much more frantic. There's a deception, a decoy Sofia, a desperate rescue, and a parachute sequence that should earn Ezio a Red Bull sponsorship. And then Ahmet, being the little snake that he is, tries to escape with the keys. Obviously Ezio follows him. You do not piss off our boy. And what comes next is an enormous carriage chase. And this is where the series' change in identity becomes impossible to ignore. The original Assassin's Creed was about quietly studying a target, blending into a crowd, striking and disappearing. Revelations is now throwing carriages into each other while Ezio is dragged through the countryside behind an horse. It's like a set piece from a completely different game. The game has now turned into Need for Speed Horse Pursuit. And honestly, it is really fun. It's completely ridiculous, but it's fun. This is Assassin's Creed trying to become a blockbuster. The problem is that blockbuster spectacle and social stealth don't always sit comfortably together, like a fat couple crammed on a plane off to Benidorm. The balance is something the franchise will struggle with for the next several games. Ubisoft wants intimate assassination roleplay, but Ubisoft also wants massive explosions and blockbuster spectacle. Sometimes those two goals can meet in a pub on a Friday night and have instant chemistry and go back home together. Sometimes they'll wake up the next morning, realise they've made an horrible mistake, and climb out of the bathroom window feeling dirty. Eventually, Assassin's Creed catches Ahmet. And you expect the usual final confrontation. Assassin versus Templar, freedom versus order, maybe another debate or a duel. But then, Prince Selim arrives, Ahmet's brother, Suleiman's father, and the future Sultan. He takes one look at Ahmet, and he just throws him off a cliff. That's it. Months of conspiracy, ancient keys, Templars, political manipulation, and this guy resolves the whole thing with about as much effort as a bloke whacking a wasp with a rolled up bit of newspaper. Job done. It's one of the funniest anticlimaxes in the entire series. Ezio spent the entire game hunting down this douche missile, and then Selim appears and essentially says, "I'll take it from here, big lad," and
fatality.
The moment also reminds us of something important. Ezio isn't the centre of history, and neither are the Assassins, or the Templars. There are other forces at work, dynasties, armies and politics, and people making decisions for reasons completely unrelated to the secret war. History does not pause so two blokes can finish their debate. Selim tells Ezio that he's had enough of his shit and he needs to leave Constantinople. And thanks to Suleiman, he manages to leave alive. More importantly, Ezio accepts. He doesn't argue, he doesn't insist that the city still needs him, or start rebuilding another brotherhood. He's ready to go. He's had enough. And that's how much he's changed. He came to Constantinople looking for Altaïr, where he leaves with Sophia. Together, they travel back to Masyaf, and now the fortress means something completely different. At the beginning of the game, Ezio only knew the legend. Now he knows the man. He's seen Altaïr young and arrogant. He's seen him as a mentor. He's seen him fall in love with Maria, seen him become a father, lose his son, Malik, Maria, Masyaf, then return, grow old, and finally prepare the brotherhood to continue on without him. The library door opens, and after all of that, there's almost nothing inside. There's no mountains of books, no secret weapons, no advanced machines, just a dingy dark chamber, a chair, and Altaïr. Well, what's left of him anyway. He's been dead for centuries, sitting exactly where he chose to die. That's the real library. Just Altaïr, his memories, choices, failures and lessons, and through one final key, Ezio sees how Altaïr chose to end his life. Masyaf was being abandoned. Altaïr understands that the Brotherhood cannot remain tied to one location. The knowledge is being sent out into the world. The assassins are leaving. His son Darim is with him. And this final scene between father and son is one of the best in the franchise because nothing dramatic actually happens. There is no villain and no final fight. No ancient technology, shooting lasers in the sky. Altaïr, just simply old, who knows he's gonna die, and Darim knows too. They say goodbye to each other, and that's it. It's devastating, but it's normal. Altaïr tells Darim to leave. He doesn't want his son staying behind to die with him. He spent most of his life carrying responsibility, and now he refuses to make Darim carry the last piece. Darim leaves. Altaïr is alone, and then the game forces you to walk, slowly. No sprinting, running, or jumping downstairs because we've all developed the patience of caffeinated toddlers. Altaïr just walks, step by step, and for once there's no reason for him to hurry. He spent his whole life running towards something, and now there's nowhere left for him to go. He reaches the chamber, stashes the apple, sits on his chair, and he dies. There's no heroics or audience, no celebration, just peace, finally. And then we're back with Ezio. He finds the apple where Altaïr left it, and this is his final test. He could take it. The Brotherhood would probably want it. The Templars definitely want it. It contains knowledge beyond anything Ezio understands. A younger Ezio would probably have just picked it up, but this Ezio looks at it and effectively says, "Nah, Chief, you can stay here." And that's probably the wisest decision that he's ever made. Ezio spent most of his life chasing answers, and every answer led to another question. There's always another secret, and if Ezio lets himself believe the next secret will finally make everything complete, he will spend the rest of his life chasing it. So he stops. He takes off his weapons, he lays them down, and he finally walks away. And that's the real ending of the Ezio trilogy. A trilogy that started with a heartbroken teenager using his dad's hidden blade ends with a wise old man removing it and leaving it behind. Not because he can't fight anymore, but because he doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want that to be all that he is. And that matters. Retirement is easy when you're forced into it, but Ezio is still capable. He could still take on entire armies if he wanted to. I mean, we've just watched him dismantle another conspiracy in his 50s. He could keep going. And that's why he's choosing to stop. And that's why it's powerful. And then he speaks. Not to Sophia or Altaïr, but to Desmond. Ezio doesn't know what the Animus is, but after everything that he's seen through the pieces of Eden, he understands that someone beyond his own timeline has been watching him. He realises that he's been carrying a message. Altaïr carried one for him, and now Ezio is carrying one for someone else. And this is where the entire game finally justifies its title. The revelation is not the library, it's connection. Altaïr lived, Ezio learned from him, Desmond learns from Ezio. None of them see the full picture, they simply pass the message forward, and that is legacy. Not having a statue, not being remembered by name, but making choices that help somebody you will never meet. And that brings us to Desmond, because while Ezio has been disappearing into Altaïr's memories, Desmond is having a much less enjoyable time in the Animus. After the end of Brotherhood, Desmond's mind is in pieces, like after a particularly heavy night on some Colombian vitamin powder. Last time we'd seen him, Juno had took control of him, killed Lucy, and then he passed out. And after too much Animus exposure, the boundaries between his own identity and the lives of his ancestors are beginning to blur together. So Rebecca popped him in a save state in the machine, the Black Room. It's like a digital Backrooms. Mechanically, Revelations suddenly becomes a completely different game. Desmond's sequences are played in first person. The environments are abstract. Blocks, shapes, floating geometry, platforms that appear and disappear. I completely understand why some players hate it. I did. I like Desmond's story, but someone at Ubisoft was taking a piss with this. You spend hours running across Constantinople as Ezio, and then suddenly you're building glowing platforms in a grey void while Desmond talks about his childhood trauma. The shift is jarring, but the story underneath is important. For the first time, the series actually spends time asking who Desmond is, not what he inherited. He grew up on a farm, an assassin compound. His father, William, was deeply involved with the Brotherhood. Desmond was trained from childhood and taught that Templars were everywhere, that he had responsibilities, that normal life was dangerous, and Desmond hated it. From his perspective, his parents sounded paranoid. So at 16, he ran away. He started a normal life. He worked as a bartender, stayed off the grid, and tried to be nobody. And then Abstergo found him. Now this must have been a pretty infuriating moment for the lad, because spending years telling yourself that your dad is a conspiracy-obsessed freak, only to get kidnapped by the exact conspiracy that he'd warned you about, is a little shitty. Inside the Black Room, Desmond also meets Clay, Subject 16. Clay has haunted the series since the first game, with his blood messages, glyphs and hidden videos and warnings. But now we finally meet something resembling him. Clay was an assassin operative. He was sent to infiltrate Abstergo. He became Subject 16. He was put through enormous amounts of ancestral memory, and eventually the bleeding effect completely wrecked his mind. He could no longer distinguish himself from his ancestors, and he died. But some version of his consciousness remained in the Animus. Clay is basically the future that Desmond is trying to avoid. A man consumed by other people's memories. And that is why Desmond's story in Revelations is about identity. He spent 3 games becoming other people, learning Altaïr's instincts, Ezio's movements, their memories, grief and abilities. And now he has to remember where they all end and where he begins. The Animus data fragments scattered around Constantinople tie into this. There are 100 of them, because apparently Ubisoft think the more collectibles a game has ties directly into human happiness. This is wrong.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
But collecting them unlocks more of Desmond's memories, and thematically that works. Ezio explores ancestral memory, and Desmond recovers personal memory. The deeper we go into Ezio, the more Desmond has to rebuild himself. The problem is that the first-person platforming is not especially interesting for anyone involved. It's experimental. And I respect it for that. But if you were replaying the game mainly for Ezio, suddenly being asked to stack digital blocks while listening to Desmond explain his teenage years can feel like someone changing the channel while you're halfway through a film. It is hot dog shite. Still, Desmond reaches an important conclusion. He ran away from the Brotherhood because he never chose it. Now he has chosen to return. By the time Ezio finishes his memories and walks away from the Creed, Desmond is finally able to separate himself from Ezio. Ezio knows who he is, so Desmond can remember who he is. And that's a really clever connection between the two stories. And it leads directly into the ending. Desmond wakes up. He knows where they need to go. The first civilization's warning is urgent. The solar catastrophe is approaching. And there's a big old temple in North America. And that's where the next game is heading. Which leaves us with the actual gameplay legacy of Revelations. Because mechanically, this game is a strange beast. It's not the leap that Assassin's Creed 2 was. It doesn't reinvent the series. Instead, it kinda just feels like Ubisoft taking the entire formula and then treating it how Bonnie Blue acts when she's trying to beat another record and seeing how many more things she can stuff in there before it breaks. Ziplines make Constantinople easy to travel. Eagle Sense adds tracking. Bomb crafting gives you more tools. Master Assassin missions deepen recruitment. Mediterranean defense makes the Brotherhood feel massive. Janissaries make combat engaging. Dens make territory more reactive. The economy returns, shops can be renovated again, and money builds over time. Ezio once again becomes a commercial property investor while apparently focusing on ancient mysteries. At this point, I'm starting to think that real estate is the Brotherhood's primary source of income. Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Buy low, renovate, diversify your portfolio. Books become another major part of exploration, which suits Ezio at this point in his life. Young Ezio spent his spare time shagging his way across Italy. Older Ezio spends all his money on obscure old books. That's probably a realistic depiction of aging, to be honest. The memoir pages lead to a hidden armor set. Treasure chests are everywhere again. Assassin contracts keep recruits active. Faction challenges encourage you to use mechanics that you might usually ignore. And multiplayer returns from Brotherhood. It's essentially still the same. The problem with Revelations is not its lack of ideas. I think it just has too many. And that's why it sometimes feels messy. Bomb crafting is deep enough to support much more complex stealth than the missions actually need. Den defences exist, but they're easily avoided, and they're wank. The recruit system is stronger, but competing with Mediterranean defence. The map is absolutely covered in icons, and this problem will get worse. And this is where you can see the shitty Ubisoft formula beginning to solidify. I'm not going to list them all, but it really did start to take the piss. And it's only going to get worse in later games. But Revelations mostly holds its shit together, because the story underneath it remains focused. Ezio is searching for meaning. Every major part of the game pushes him toward the same answer. The Brotherhood can survive without him. Sophia gives him a reason to leave and live. Ezio spent his entire life trying to carry responsibility himself. And at the end of Revelations, he finally trusts the future. He doesn't know Desmond, but he trusts him. And that's why I think Revelations has aged well on an emotional level. At release, it was easy to see the familiar mechanics and think it was just another Ezio game. Another Assassin's Creed only 12 months after the last one. The fatigue was understandable. But stripped to that release schedule, the game feels a lot different now. It's mature, and it feels like an epilogue that was the size of a full game. And I mean that as an honest compliment. This game impressed me despite its flaws. Games are very good at giving us reasons to keep fighting. There's always new enemies and weapons, levels and threats. But they aren't always good at admitting that eventually the healthiest thing that a hero can do is put down their sword and go home. Ezio chooses Sophia, he chooses time, and a life after the Brotherhood. And after everything he's lost, it doesn't feel like walking away from responsibility. It feels like finally understanding what he was supposed to protect in the first place. Life, freedom, and choice, and that includes his own. And that's where we leave Ezio Auditore. Not on a throne, not standing over another dead Templar. Just a tired man, finally deciding that his life should belong to him again. It's probably the most assassin decision that he ever makes. That's all from me. See you on the next one.
Requiescat in pace, Altaïr.